Hi baby angels, it's BB. Welcome back to another tarot tag. Today I will be doing not my tarot aesthetic, and originally I didn't think I was going to have very many decks to choose from because I've been purging a lot, trading, selling, etc. And I have several decks that are not my traditional tarot aesthetic, meaning for whatever reason I wouldn't have normally been drawn to maybe the artwork or the style of deck, but they fit in my collection and or get use. So I'm going to start out with the Lover's Path Tarot. Oh, and this tag was originally done by Mixtress Ray. What's up, Mixtress Ray? Thanks for this tag. It's really fun. It's really fun to watch. We'll see if it's really fun to show. So the Lover's Path Tarot, I was initially drawn to, honestly, because I saw it in a video of a reading and someone, like, I saw these backs and I was like, I need this in my life. The backs are beautiful. I love them. That part is my tarot aesthetic. I love hearts. I love any type of sacred heart or a claddagh, which this is what that reminds me of. And I love any type of deck that is love themed, but because I like it so much, I'm really discerning and critical about the decks that are love themed. So I don't have very many, but I'm always looking out for it. This deck, I think, is objectively very beautiful. I love the borders. I love the names of the lovers. It even has like Orions and Oxidens. I wonder if those are the constellations. I don't know. Most of the design I really do love. The art itself isn't really my style. I'm pretty picky about faces, about scenery. It feels a little dated. It feels a little like, I like fine art and it doesn't feel quite like fine art. It feels like, I don't know. There's something about the like uncanny valley, but these borders though, so this one's the same. Oh, because it's also a major. So then this is a court card and the scenery that's inlaid within the border. Everything that isn't a human, I'm loving. But I guess that it doesn't, this is not my tarot aesthetic. Firstly, because I'm not necessarily super into nature-y decks, especially nature illustration, even though I can, of course, acknowledge that it's beautiful. It's just, I'm not always the most earthiest of people. But something about the illustrations of the people, the figures, rubs me the wrong way. But that being said, it's such a well done deck and it's so woven in with mythology, folklore, history, just like stories of iconic, legendary love, and that I can't deny. I do love the way that water is illustrated in this deck too. It has a sort of maturity and soulfulness that I really do appreciate, and I think that is kind of what pushes me over the edge. Sorry, sirens. Yeah, I don't know. There's something about it that... And then, of course, I really do like the minors. I love the way that wands are arrows and their heart. My first tattoo was a bow and arrow. It was like a Cupid's bow. And so any of this type of imagery, and it is really well done, it's well executed, I am super attracted to. So Odette. See, like, I don't think that I don't know. I have never seen a deck that had Odette and Ivan. That's really magical. That's really amazing. Oh, I went to a show last night. Do not pay any attention to this weird red thing. It is definitely a stamp for entry. So yeah, are we only getting arrows? So even though I guess I would look at this and say like, oh, this looks like an 80s illustrated deck and not in the way that I'm attracted to 80s. But like I said, the execution is just too good that I don't really mind everything else. I only have the little white book of this deck. I do not have, oh yeah, we have seen some cups. I do not have like the bigger companion book. If anyone knows where to get that, or if they know that, like, because I've seen this sold as a set, and I'm wondering, like, I'm assuming that comes with like a bigger book, and I would love to have that because I'd love to read more about each of the couples. I've said this before, like so this isn't wands, this is swords, which makes sense. Okay, so I've said this before in decks that I'm most attracted to the swords and the cups, and I think that's partially why I love this deck so much, because the wands are not hitting it for me. But yeah, that's not my thing. But the cups, and we've seen coins. Yeah, I really do like the coins too, because they have that, like, it's like a half of a Sacred Heart and half of a Clodagh. I don't know if that symbol has its own or different, what's it called, name. What's it called? Name. But let me know. Anyway, this is a really beautiful classical deck, and even though the humans in it are kind of a little bit off and remind me of old storybooks that I didn't really love the illustration of, everything else is so wonderful that it just takes everything else over. Okay, so that was way too long to work on. Oh, Tristan and he's sold to talk about one deck, so I will try to speed it up. The next deck I have is the True Black Tarot. This was probably one of the first, I want to say it's one of the first Kickstarters I ever backed. If I didn't back this on Kickstarter, then I got it off of the website as an indie. I think it still is an indie. I really want to say I did back this on Kickstarter. This is a really wonderful deck, and I was attracted to it immediately because of the art, the production quality, how different, how striking it is. Honestly, the use of shadow and light is incredible. The rose petal finish, which I think this is my first deck that had a rose petal finish. The embossing on it, and there's sometimes embossing on the front of the cards too. It was just a great quality. And I thought this was my tarot aesthetic when I bought it. And then I realized, after kind of curating my collection as it is now, that I never ever reach for this deck. And I have considered rehoming it, and I have decided not to every time because of things like this. So I think that I prefer more of a fantasy. Like, this looks more modern to me, and I do like modern decks, but that's not really what I'm looking for in this type of deck. Like, I don't feel like this and this are the same. I do love, like, the little, can you see, it looks like dust, like gold dust or dust of light. So yeah, I think I've come to realize that these types of decks are not my aesthetic, but I do really cherish this deck, and I don't plan on getting rid of it. It doesn't mean I'll never use it. Sometimes I just like to take it out and look at it. I mean, it's magic. And yeah, what I don't love is the modernity. Even like the glasses sometimes, like, they look a little modern. I wish they looked a little bit older. I do love when this artist does more of like a Grecian or Roman vibe. It's just a really stunning deck. It's just not something, I think if I were to have seen this now, I wouldn't have purchased it. But there are certain cards in the deck, and the quality of this deck, I don't necessarily mean like the physical quality or the quality of the art, which I mean are 100% totally there. The quality, I mean kind of like the personality of this deck and what this deck brings, like the aura that it has, like, I don't even know if that's the right word, but it's not duplicated anywhere else in my collection, which is probably why I do not want to let it go. That kind of looks like Loki, huh? So that's where I'm at with the True Black. Not my tarot aesthetic. But how can you say no to the baby? The baby squid. Okay. Next we have the Tarot of Sexual Magic. This is another one of those where I'm like, I want a sexual tarot, but am I going to connect with the images? And also, this is one that I bought, or I didn't buy it for the backs, but it caught my eye purely because of these backs, because they're incredible. Isn't it funny how, I don't know if you guys go through this, but I will see decks that have the best backs and they tend to be not my favorite decks. But then my favorite decks like have meh backs half the time. So I think that this isn't my tarot aesthetic because it's very low scarabeo. Oh, warning, like sexual themes here. It's very low scarabeo, like it kind of takes you out of the fantasy. I don't love necessarily, like sometimes they do a great job with the illustration, and there are elements that I like about it, and then sometimes the faces feel a little bit off. I've said this before, I'm so picky about faces, and like how dare I, because I am not an artist, but yeah, I think that sometimes it's the faces, and then for every card it's really just this like terribly plain border with all of the, you know, normal low scarabeo writing on it, descriptions in different languages, which is so great, but it takes me out of it. And then there's this like vector, like shadow here behind it. It's like very modern, and I don't know, like red is great for passion, and it also is great for some, like as a border for some of these images, but sometimes it doesn't even go with like the color scheme, and the color scheme is really beautiful. The other thing to note about this deck is like there are definitely some problematic images. I don't know, I could go into that, but it is very hetero. Yeah, I don't know. I think that if these images were redone, I really do love the illustration style. So it's, for once, it's not the art itself necessarily that is making me feel like it's not my aesthetic, but it's not something that I necessarily want to show, put down on a table and like take pictures of on Instagram, or even like do a reading for someone, because it's just not the prettiest overall card to look at. And like I said, the fantasy is just broken by these modern weird, I guess I could mod it, but I've never modded a deck before. And then I do like titles, and I don't want it to be small and just be this little square of a photo and then me have to like put in Sharpie or something what it is. Like none of that sounds good to me, and I love the backs as is. It's a conundrum. Somebody needs to put out like a really good sexual themed deck and have it be kind of kinky like this, because that's cool. It's just, yeah, okay. That's the Tarot of Sexual Magic. The next one is the Iris Oracle. I was drawn to this because it's was modern and different and funky. And it's also incredible as far as the messages. And I did used to like use this a lot in my readings. But what happened was I found more oracle decks that were very similar. Maybe not like, I'm trying to think of ones that have just as good of messages as this. Maybe they don't encapsulate everything that this deck offers, but I have multiple decks that do a little bit of what this deck offers, you know, so all together it kind of makes up for it. And so more and more I don't reach for this because it is kind of juvenile. Like this is the opposite of the last deck where I like the borders, I like the words, like the font, I like the color, and then the images themselves are the things that aren't the best for me. And I don't think that it's the content of the images. I think it's the fact that it's the illustration style. I think that it's a little bit DIY. It's a little bit I wanted to say like edgy, but I don't think edgy is the word, and I do like edgy. So I don't know. It's unrefined. And I think even in the decks that I love that are modern or abstract, or, you know, this reminds me kind of the Apparition Tarot, there's still a sense of refinement, and it's probably because these are straight up, you know, colored pencils and it doesn't have a black outline. You know, it's kind of just details like that. And I think that this is really cool art. It's just not my tarot aesthetic. Hashtag. So I think I might even be rehoming this. I do really love the messages though. So I'm going to have to do some thinking as to if Sirens number 2. So sorry. I'm going to have to do some thinking as to whether this is going to, like, I'm going to have a good replacement for this, or if I have one already, really. And I do like this one. Of course I do. It's the twin card. So Iris Oracle, great deck, not my tarot aesthetic. Next we have the Tattoo Tarot Ink and Intuition. This was on my list and then not on my list, and then I got it like on a whim because I saw Lisa Pepez talk about how she kind of underestimated it and was really enjoying it. And this one's really simple. I am a fan of tattoos and tattoo art, but I've never been super into traditional Americana tattoos, and that's what this is. So I didn't think that I could get much from it. But that's not true. It's deceptively simple, and I really enjoy it. And there are things about Americana tattooing that I do like. I don't like, and then I've gotten so used to seeing it and expecting it from this deck that certain things like this that don't look like traditional Americana, I'm like, why would you do this? If a sailor didn't get this tattooed or wouldn't get this tattooed on him in like 1945, then maybe don't put it in the deck. Like, I just want it to be like 1950s up in here. When I open this deck, that's what I want it to be. So, though this is stuff I would never get myself, like, I would never tattoo myself with. Don't worry, I don't tattoo myself. That was just grammar. I do really like it. It's not one that I use a lot, but I do think it's pretty poignant. A simple one, not a long explanation. The Tattoo Tarot Ink and Intuition. Definitely not my normal tarot aesthetic. Okay, next we have, it's in a bag. Let me get it out because the book is big. Okay, don't come for me because this is like a universally loved deck. Except for there are a few people that are like, I don't get it. Another great back. Wow, is that like a good theme here? The Mary L. So the Mary L is gorgeous. It's gorgeous. I agree. But I think that only half of these cards are my tarot aesthetic. And I think that's okay. I love the rawness of this deck. I love the illustration, like the colors used. I love that it's provocative and it's so, I don't know, like earthy, like somatic, like it's so about the body and how like we are so connected to everything else. And it's such an interesting and unique style that I love it. Like these two, if you were to show me these two cards, I would want to purchase the deck because I think that just on their own, they're so incredible. But if you showed me these two, I wouldn't necessarily want to purchase the deck just based off of this. I think that there's a lot of variation in the imagery in this deck. And this is stunning, but it's not necessarily something that I would think to buy. But because this deck is so undeniable in its energy and in its mastery of like art, like this art is incredible. See, this is something that I would buy. I don't know. And I don't know if you're getting major glare because my camera is above my head. So I apologize if that's the case. So I don't know. It's really unpredictable. Like, I think I know how to spot what I'm going to like. And I think that maybe that's true for most of the time, but sometimes you just have a visceral reaction. I love the unabashed nudity, especially masculine nudity in this deck. I think that it's a part of life, and I think that it's a part of our human experience, and I love when it is present in such a real and yet like artistic way. But gorgeous image, not my tarot aesthetic, you know? Gorgeous image, not my tarot aesthetic. But would I consider rehoming this? No, not really. I think there's too much to learn from it, and I think it's too like visceral to deny. I remember pulling this deck, or this card, I'm sorry, and being like, this is not what I thought it was. And then having to YouTube like how to study the Marielle, which I still haven't done in enough, but there are just mysteries in here. Anyway, I could talk about this for a long time. So the Marielle, gorgeous deck, not my tarot aesthetic. Okay, we have 3 more. This is the Spirit Cats. It's an oracle deck. I got this early on in my tarot collecting journey. And it has this sweetness to it. It has, I do love watercolor. It has this kitschiness to it. This new agey kind of, it reminds me of like the late 90s. When was this made? Well, the copyright is 2016. It reminds me of like someone who lives in Old Town San Diego and has since 1995 and paints in their like beautiful backyard of their little Spanish style duplex and goes shopping at all the little kitschy like novelty stores. Sorry, this is stuck. I don't know. It's not, they're images that I think are really cute, but not necessarily that reflect me. But the reason I keep this deck is because the little descriptions of these kittens are so good. And every time I've ever used this in a divinatory way, it was so spot on that I was like, there's such value in this deck. And I think that they are really precious. And I think that I maybe deny myself of a childlike type of whimsy. Like, I say that I'm very in touch with my inner child, but then I don't allow myself to go full into color and whimsy and a juvenile type of, I don't even know if this is how I would describe a juvenile, but I think there's something that maybe I want to deny in myself in this deck, and so that's why I keep it. And I should use it more. I should listen to myself. Yeah, I don't know if kitschy is the word, but you know what I'm saying? If you know how to describe this, let me know. So that's the Spirit Cats. It's a cutie. Okay, this is new to my collection, and I have wanted this for a long time. Japaridze Tarot. And just off the bat, the backs are not my tarot aesthetic. And I kind of don't understand the backs because it feels almost Celtic to me. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Oh, I pulled this recently. This is a card that I do like. Okay, let's find. So there are some that I am attracted to. And this reminds me of a certain era in time. Oh no. In art as well. But one that I have nostalgia for, or like one that I'm like personally drawn to. It's such a good book. Okay. Oh, was I gonna find out when this was made? Yes, maybe. $2014. Yeah, it's weird. It reminds me of a different time. It reminds me of like growing up and seeing different art styles like this. I don't know. I associate like any type of art style with a time period that I experienced and people that I saw, and like what they would, if they would like this type of thing and their lifestyle, you know, like art styles to lifestyles, I think is what I think about. There's an element of this that is greatly of interest to me, and then other things that aren't. So something like this feels nostalgic and gorgeous, and I'm so drawn to it, and then this doesn't at all. Nothing about this. Nothing about this, you know, but I have seen the images of this deck and feel that there's so much spirit in them. And as a whole, they're so intriguing that, like, I mean, these are beautiful. And maybe they would be considered like my typical aesthetic that I would be drawn to, because I like all sorts of aesthetics. But this, I don't know. Does anyone do that where they're so of two minds about the same deck? Like half of the cards they could go for and half of the cards they don't. I mean, I think I've heard that about the Margaret Peterson, like the majors versus the minors. I love this. I have a bunch of this style of art saved on my Pinterest too. But this, no. Yeah, it's so weird. But I mean, I just got this deck, so I'm sure I'll come to love all of the cards, and it's going to be incredible. And I think I heard about like the creation story of this deck, which was really interesting as well. So yeah, overall, I'm super happy that it's here, and I'm super happy and excited to work with it. But there are elements of it that freak me out, or like the way that these are drawn. No. And I'm only pointing out mainly the things I don't like. No. The people. And then we have like this, and then we have this guy. Inconsistencies as far as era is really, really hard to, like historical era or fashion era. It's like really, really hard to, it's a fine line. I'm like, what am I trying to say? It's a high wire, you know, like it's easy to fall to one side and make it not look great. But the Jack Rosé is kind of a mystery that I'm excited to reveal and get to the bottom of. The last deck I have is the Witch's Wisdom Tarot. And I got this deck, sorry, ew, hair, mostly because of, the nature scenes and the animals. I've talked about this. I don't like really the figures or the humans in this deck, but, and it isn't my art style as well. This illustration style isn't really what I'm usually into. This is definitely not. If these were like the only images that I would have seen, I would not have bought the deck. But I did see a flip through of this and about how much depth, like it's such a wealth of story and world building. And I felt like I was missing kind of, like I said before, I'm not very earthy. Like sometimes I'm missing that, right? I have an okay amount of earth in my chart. Like whenever I get my chart read, or when they do like a breakdown of my elements, everyone says that it's pretty even, or you know, it's even enough. I love swans. I know I say that every time, but like thank goodness for every swan card in every deck. So yeah, images like this are incredible. But I feel the need for earth. I think I lean into everything else, every other element. And this just felt like the right thing to do. I'm also interested in getting the wildwood, which I've gone back and forth on too. And maybe once I have the wildwood, maybe I won't have a need for this. But I think that there were certain cards like this one where I was driven by individual card art for this purchase. But I really do want to give this a chance, and I think it deserves that, to kind of get into the depth of this. And so that's what I'm going to do. It's one of those half and half things. I feel like I could pick out half the cards in the deck and be like, these are amazing. I feel like it's a great one too. Even though it's not, this style is not my style, I can still acknowledge that I'm drawn to a lot of them. But it's weird because I feel bad. I don't hear a lot of people talking about being of such of like two minds about just the aesthetics of a deck, and having it come down to like certain cards where they love it or they hate it. I'm remembering that Danny Mystic did that once, where, not once, I think she does it all the time, where when she gets a new deck, she goes through it and she looks at every single card and she splits them into piles. So for example, maybe I'll just grab this one again. So she'll go, I don't know if I have room to show you, but, or maybe I'll hold it over here. So she'll go like it, like it, like it, like it, don't like it, love it, like it, don't like it, don't like it, don't like it, don't like it. It's like all the people don't like it, love it, Love it. Love it. Love it. Like it. You know what I mean? And she'll do that throughout for the whole deck, so she can kind of get an idea. And it's not supposed to be like a thinking about it and really like ruminating over it. It's supposed to be an initial instinctual reaction to seeing the cards, and that's part of like how she gets to know a deck. And I think that's really cool. So maybe there's more of us that feel that way, but it's not something that I see discussed on TarotTube a ton. Hi, interjecting here. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I missed one, and it's the one. So not my tarot aesthetic, the Smith-Waite. I would say most of the Smith-Waite editions, I think there are only a couple that I'm vying for, and one is the Golden Rider, and I think there might have been another one that I can't remember. Right now I'm kind of stuck on the Golden Rider. But the imagery of this deck, it's not the depictions, it's not the situations or anything like that turns me off. It's just the illustration style. This deck is easier for me. This is the, excuse me, obviously the borderless edition. And so what they did is they muted the colors down, which helped me because the really bright ones were not my thing. But I have seen recolorations of the bright versions that I have liked. I mean, namely the one that I just mentioned, which is the Golden Rider, which is very bright and has like bright pinks in it and things like that. I don't know. I've never really been drawn to this illustration style, and I think mostly it was the colors. So when I purchased this deck, it was really helpful because it seemed easier to look at, honestly, for me. And it still is, but it's still not quite there. You know, it's just, I think I've seen better since then. And so then I'm just like missing out. And then also I was very into borderless decks when I got this. And now I'm feeling like I could use a border. That would be nice. And one of the reasons why I like the idea of borderless too is because early on when I was learning tarot and watching a lot of TarotTube, having a lack of a border and having, you know, 3 cards next to each other, they didn't even have to be touching, right? Like they could just be like this. It would help kind of blend the messages, and you would see things that you wouldn't necessarily see when you had a border in between, like the relation between the cards and who's looking at who and what direction the energy is flowing, and you know, things like that, and who's above who, you know. So I have an appreciation for the art of the RWS like more than I ever did before, but I feel like it was worth talking about because for so many years I had such an aversion to this deck and kind of all of the different iterations that I had seen of it. And again, this is still not my favorite, but it is definitely a step above other versions that I've seen. And it took me so long to come around to this. But that being said, the first time that I even read with this deck, because I bought it just thinking, oh, I'll just learn with it. I'll just use it alongside my tarot learning books. And I read with it, and it was incredible. Of course it was incredible, you know? So I do love the tulips. That's gorgeous. But RWS has great shit in it. Like, I love all the patterns on their clothes. Why do I never notice that? Is that only highlighted more in certain versions of this deck? Comment below. Because all of these are just giving. All these knights look very gay. And I mean that in the best way. In the highest of compliments. So cool. Anyway, yeah, it took me forever to come around, and now I really do love and appreciate it, but it's still not you don't look at this and go, yeah, that's a BB deck right there, you know? So yeah, that had to be mentioned. Thanks. All right, so that's the Not My Tarot aesthetic tag. Maybe I'll show you, like I usually do, backs, and they'll be pretty because a lot of these decks have really pretty backs. So I hope you enjoyed. I'm sorry if my energy felt kind of low today. I think I'm just not caffeinated yet. I don't know. I went out last night and I was so tired. And then I woke up this morning at like 8 a.m. So I went to bed at probably 1 or 1:30. And then I woke up at like 8 and went back to bed because that was not gonna happen. And then woke up again at about 10. Got coffee, only had like 2 sips of it. We'll see where we go with that, but all right. I don't know what this is not like a cute configuration. I'm sorry, I can't do better. Oh, maybe we should add Iris. Is that better? Maybe not. Well, thanks for being here. Thanks for being my friend. Thanks for being curious. And my mom's coming. I gotta go.